Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Wow, such power. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Stephen Minter, an executive in residence at Cleveland State University's Maxine Goodman Levin College of Urban Affairs and a proud City Club member. And I also will say, since I was walking over here, someone pointed me out and came up and asked me if I was Steve Minter. And I said yes. And they said, well, I saw your picture hanging in the conference room at the Cleveland Foundation. I thought you were dead. So I am really glad to be here in front of everybody today. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, the President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, and a good friend and a professional colleague of mine, Marsha A. Mockabee. In recent years, we've been reminded of what became known as the Black migrations from the South to the North in the early 20th century and even up to the mid-20th century. Families who migrated faced terrible social and economic conditions in cities and needed help adapting to urban life. Thus, the commitment and the committee that was established on urban conditions among Negroes was established on September 29th, 1910, in New York City. The name of the organization, the Committee on Urban Conditions, was changed to the National Urban League in 1920. Today, the League serves more than 2.6 million persons through 88 affiliates in this country. Cleveland became the 6th affiliate of the National Urban League in 1917. Marsha Mockabee will have much more to say about this. I've been privileged to work with and sometimes counsel Ms. Mockabee for the last 8 years. I would tell you that she came into my office at the university and said, I'd like you to do this and this and this and this. And I said, I'm just not ready, prepared to do anything like that. She said, fine, then you will be willing to be my advisor. And I said, okay. Little did I realize that as soon as the next stationery was out, I was listed right below her name as senior advisor. So I've never had to be elected to the board, but it's been clear I should be there. That tells you a lot about her just from that illustration. She can best be described by words written about her as in Phenomenal Woman magazine, and it said, a tender-hearted strategist for tough times ahead. She has been a tender-hearted recovery chief for Cleveland's Urban League. She's drawn on her prior work experience in communications with Ohio Bell, on her extensive work with youth in education and workforce development, and on her faith to design and implement programs to achieve the Urban League's mission. Mrs. Mockabee has more than 28 years of nonprofit leadership experience. She began running programs for the Urban League in 1991 and took over the helm of the organization in 2009, transforming it inside and out. It should also be noted that she is the first woman CEO in the League's 100-year history. When they call her the recovery chief, it is a very accurate term, and I think there are a number of persons in this audience who have served on the board of the Urban League who would testify to that, including our current board chair, James Myers, and former board chairs, Pat Ramsey, Hilton Clark, Tracy Oliver, and many former and current board members. And just to show off a little bit, I'd like all of those current, former board members to please stand. Since 2010, Marsha has served on the National Urban League's Education and Jobs Task Forces. In February of 2013, she was selected to lead an Equity and Excellence in Education initiative for the state of Ohio. This remarkable woman has a bachelor's degree from Concordia University and a master's in Business and Management from Indiana Wesleyan. Years ago, the great National Urban League president and civil rights icon, Whitney M. Young, wrote some words which I believe apply to Marsha. He wrote, "I am not anxious to be the loudest voice or the most popular, but I would like to think that at a crucial moment, I was an effective voice for the voiceless, an effective hope for the hopeless." Marsha, I think that applies to you. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club, please join me in inviting Marsha Mockabee, a tireless worker for justice, to the podium.
So there are two things that I learned from my recent experience at our gala at the Hard Rock Casino. I learned that cute shoes are made in less than 3-inch heels. And I also learned not to be afraid to ask for equity assistance when you need it. So, first of all, let me take this opportunity. Steve, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. And let me just say that one of the highest compliments that a mentee can pay to the mentor is to be able to run the play that has been designed, whether they're there or not. And I think you've taught me that. I'm ready to come off the bench, and I think I'm ready to start now. So thank you so much. So I'd like to also acknowledge the Urban League staff who are here, because I'll tell you, they're the ones who do the work tirelessly all day long. So my staff and consultants, I'd like for you to stand. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Urban League Guild, who are the ambassadors that assist my posse. Urban League Guild members, please stand. Thank you. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, staff, the Urban League Guild, and volunteers, we are so humbled and honored to be here to speak today. The City Club of Cleveland has hosted American presidents and those who desired to be, international figures, civil rights icons, sports heroes, and thought leaders in every walk of life, because the City Club provides a safe and open environment for the exchange of ideas and the shaping of our country's heritage. I too have had the privilege of being on this stage before. So to my friend Dan Moulthrop, I salute you, and I thank you for being such a wonderful friend and partner. Thank you so much. Let's give the City Club a round of applause. So, okay, you all ready? All right, I'm gonna take you on a journey with me. We're gonna go on a journey, and we're gonna look in the rearview mirror, and we're gonna look back over the 100 years of the Urban League's existence. So a little over 100 years ago, on October 13th, as you've heard before, Hollingsworth Wood, chairman of the National League on Urban Conditions Among Negroes, appeared before this very body during a pivotal period in American history. 1 year earlier, in 1916, we had begun the greatest migration in this country. The Great Migration was the movement of individuals from the South to cities in the North, the Northeast, and the West. When that migration ended, 50 years later, over 6 million, yes, 6 million African Americans would have moved from the South to the North, Midwest, and West. According to the United States Census Bureau, until 1910, more than 90% of African Americans lived in the South, but more than 80% lived in cities by 1970. So you can see that it truly was a great migration. And I bet if I put a mic on this floor today, there are many of us that could attest that in our families, we know of individuals who came from the South to the North and sort of bunked in, lived in, until they could get on their feet and be on their own. I see heads nodding all over, okay. So the Great Migration really outranked the migration of any other ethnic group that came to the United States from outside of these shores. But why did our Great Migration happen? It is generally accepted that segregation, the spread of racist ideology, the lack of economic and social opportunities, and widespread lynchings were major incentives to relocate. According to statistics provided by the Tuskegee Institute, nearly 3,500 African Americans were lynched throughout the South between 1882 and 1968. There was the promise of a better life in the North, afforded by jobs in steel mills, railroads, meatpacking plants, and auto plants, which were engaged in the war effort during World War I. It was against this backdrop that L. Hollingsworth Wood stated the following, and I quote, "Above all, make these new residents feel that they are not here purely as a war measure, but that Cleveland has something to offer them after the war has ended." The Urban League of Greater Cleveland's 75-year of service reports, which my friend Alex Johnson Boone helped us to put together, states this: "The arriving migrants found a wealth of difficulties in making the transition from southern rural life to northern city life. The cultural barriers of prejudice were coupled with the inability of the then moderately sized Black community to absorb the surge of the population. This resulted in squalid housing conditions and increase in the probability of the spread of disease. The newcomers needed instruction on things like, and if you can believe this in this age of cell phones, how to make a telephone call, how to board a streetcar, and how to avoid unscrupulous merchants and con men who would take advantage of them. The only organization to respond effectively to these problems was the Negro Welfare Association, which is the forerunner of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. That organization held its first meeting on this day 100 years ago. And even more importantly, it held it at the City Club, which is why we're here today. Shortly after that meeting, $10,000 grant from the Mayor's Advisory War Board was furnished to the Urban League for the purposes of furnishing recreation and lodging for Black soldiers returning from the war. And so this NWA organization was an interracial organization made up of Black leaders and prominent whites, and that is very much today the same kind of makeup of Urban League boards across the country. And I want to also take a minute and note that my colleague from the Lorain County Urban League, Frank Whitfield, is also here with us today, and thank you, Frank, for joining. It should be noted that African American workers participated in and contributed to Cleveland's economic prosperity. We became America's 5th largest city by 1920. African Americans were here in June of 1936 when the Great Lakes Exposition debuted just a few blocks near the lake to commemorate Cleveland's own centennial as an incorporated city. Another war brought more prosperity for our city as steel mills fired up for military production, and again, African Americans benefited. Now, it should be noted that this Cleveland affiliate was the 6th affiliate of the national organization, National Urban League organization or movement, that has now grown to 88 affiliates throughout the United States. And they continue to serve the interests of African Americans and other minorities, making sure that equality is key. So back to our history, we were the city of champions in sports. That ring a bell? Beginning with the 1948 World Series. And yes, even the Browns were a dominant team in professional football in the 50s. Cleveland was known as the best. There you go, all right? But by the 1960s, things began to change. The economy slowed. Vernon Jordan, president of the National Urban League during the 1970s and 80s, would always say this. He would say that when the American economy catches a cold, Black folk catch pneumonia. Cleveland went through the same process of suburban growth and urban stagnation as did other American cities. The handwriting was on the wall for the prospects of those left behind, most of whom were Black and other minorities. We're talking about history, but does this sound familiar? In the ensuing years, there were setbacks, social and racial unrest, and industrial downsizing, especially in railroad and steel, with an accompanying major loss of jobs. In 1978, we became the first major American city since the Depression to default on federal loans. Unemployment reached nearly 14% in 1983, which was higher than the national average. So I set that backdrop so that you can understand the conditions in which the Urban League of Greater Cleveland began to serve and the issues that were confronting the individuals who were our constituents, and understand that we were there during those times to help people mitigate those circumstances, to create doors of access, and to provide support. And that actually still is the role that the Urban League provides today. So where are we now? We are now known as the Comeback City and have been dubbed an emerging global city. Global Cleveland, that sound good to you all? Okay. We are upgrading our infrastructure, including our roads, bridges, and livable space. We make our citizens healthier with widely acclaimed surgical and medical procedures. And not only that, we export that expertise to the world as far away as Abu Dhabi. We are increasing investments in the arts and diversifying our economy. But rather than a recitation of our past problems, this is intended to be a story of our resilient community, one that never quits, that has shown the grit, determination, and temerity to shake off the pejorative title of mistake by the lake. I recently had the privilege of hearing Congressman John Lewis speak in Cleveland when he accepted the 16th Lewis Stokes Community Visionary Award on September 15th. He characterized our situation in this country and this city in this way. He says, all of us are living in the same house. He exhorted the audience to work together to preserve and protect that house against the prevailing storms of trouble, whatever the source. That is exactly what we did in Cleveland, together during those challenging years leading up to one of America's greatest success stories. As has been the case, and Frank, you'll relate to this, with all affiliates of the National Urban League, we have been very busy here in Cleveland these last 100 years fulfilling our mission. I serve, as Steve told you, as the 10th and first female president in an unbroken succession of chief executive officers. You can view the full list of them on a display across the hall in the Mandel Room during our Urban League Live program immediately following this gathering, and everyone, is invited to attend. We have led staffs and volunteers, all of us, all CEOs have led, they gave me this other thing too, so I wasn't sure. Okay, all right. Dedicated to the proposition that every human life is precious and deserving of an equal opportunity to succeed in life. The stated mission of the National Urban League movement is to enable African American and other minorities to secure economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. This mission is signified by our equal sign that I proudly wear. The ULGC's archives are overflowing with the stories of people whose life's courses were positively changed because of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. I speak from personal experience, having come to the League over 25 years ago as a line staff person and having my horizons raised and skill set honed to the point where our volunteer leadership entrusted me to head up this great organization. And now I can't imagine any greater satisfaction or joy working in another setting. Many urban leaguers, as we call them, are household names and luminaries in our city's history. Some of them are your neighbors and friends. You may not recognize that they were connected with the Urban League. However, they number in the tens of thousands and make up the fabric of what has come to be popularly known as Believe Land, and I'd like to share a few of their stories. Monica and John Davis, and I'm going to have them stand in a minute, through their Service Master Clean business, were called on to clean the campaign plane of future President Barack Obama at 2:00 a.m. one morning in 2008. When they inquired why they were selected for this important contract, they were told, because you answered the phone. So they learned a valuable lesson that day, right? A valuable lesson that day, that the need to be accessible and ready for opportunity that comes your way is a very important business principle. They were awarded the National Urban League's Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2009 because of the tremendous growth their business achieved after just 1 year in operation. The Davises are beneficiaries of the League's business development services, and let me say, the Urban League was their first client, and they still clean our building today. John and Monica Davis, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Patricia Ramsey went to work for the Urban League straight out of college. She was instrumental in establishing the League's housing department and having it recognized by federal HUD. Pat went on to work for other organizations, including the early years of the City of Cleveland's Department of Economic Development. After getting her master's degree, she went to work for Ameritrust and is now a vice president at Fifth Third Bank. But what else has Pat done? She is the past chair of the Urban League's board, giving back always. Help me recognize and thank Pat. Now, this young lady that I'm going to describe now is a person that we call one of the poster children of the Urban League. Unfortunately, she couldn't get away from her job to be here today, but we must tell her story. Valencia White, although a straight-A high school student, never entertained the idea of going to college. She became involved with Project Ready, and that's when she learned she could go. She went on the Southern College Tour that the League sponsors every year, and while on that tour, she went to Alabama A&M, where she was accepted into that university on site while we were on the tour. She then spent her first summer interning with the Urban League, helping other students to do exactly what she had done. After she also worked at PNC, one of our corporate sponsors, following 3 summers until she graduated from Alabama A&M. After she graduated, Chrysler Corporation hired her immediately and moved her to Pittsburgh to work in the IT department, where she is a forensic IT engineer. And in her first 2 positions, she worked with IT applications with her counterparts in Italy, Brazil, and China. Several services, both Project Ready, the college tour, workforce programs, connecting her with mentors, all helped her to be successful. This centennial has given our organization and the greater Cleveland community the opportunity to reflect on our past achievements and celebrate them, while soberly assessing the state of Black America and, closer to home, Black Cleveland. The Urban League of Greater Cleveland has been there through good times and times when it appeared this city's problems were spiraling out of control. I know many of us feel that way as we watch the news each evening. But the job is to take care of individuals who are often affected by circumstances not of their own making. But before I go any further, I must stop and recognize that 8 short years ago, the continued existence of the Urban League itself was threatened by financial distress emanating from ownership of its headquarters building. Many had written our agency's obituary, but the funeral was premature. Through perseverance, the generosity and vision of Daryl McNair, President and CEO of MVP Plastics, and with the cooperation of the City of Cleveland and Huntington Bank, and let me not forget a firm faith in God, we were able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. We will forever be grateful, Daryl, for you and your contribution. Let's give him a hand. So while we celebrate the clients who emerged from this period of our community's challenges better than they were before, and the rebirth of our agency after troubled times, we cannot forget that there are many, many more who have not yet benefited from Cleveland's revitalization and renaissance. A recent study released by the United Way of Greater Cleveland, conducted by the Center for Community Solutions and Case Western Reserve University, paints a picture of people in need. They require our best and most urgent efforts to ensure they are included in the economic revival of this region. Here's what that picture looks like. 58,000 households in Cleveland are living in poverty. The average household income in Cleveland's core neighborhoods is less than $10,000 per year. 66% of adults are functionally illiterate, and 55% or less of Cleveland residents have a high school diploma. I don't say this to bring a downer. This is absolute opportunity for what this community needs to do in stepping forward to change that scenario in this city. So recognizing the severity of these challenges, the Urban League of Greater Cleveland is inviting you today to join us in one of the most important endeavors any of us can undertake, the mending and repair of the human fabric of our community. Senator Robert Kennedy, in a 1966 speech at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, said this: "Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." Over its first 100 years, the Urban League has created ripples which have turned into currents of success. Individuals who not only succeeded, but turned around and assisted others to succeed. So we haven't done this alone. We have many, many partners in this room, both philanthropic, corporate, civic, and others who have helped us to do what we do. So from these partnerships, and I'll acknowledge a few right at the end, from these partnerships, we have been able to deliver services for our clients in education and youth development, workforce development, and entrepreneurship and business development. The Urban League is the only legacy civil rights organization that operates within multiple disciplines, requiring us to be both local and national experts in these spheres all at the same time. Rather than having our capacity stretched by providing multiple services, what we have found is that we are able to be even more impactful for families whose needs are manifold. This is due in large part to the partnerships that we form with well-intentioned and resource entities. For example, working alongside the City of Cleveland, various Cleveland building trades, Cuyahoga Community College, and the Construction Employers Association has allowed us to move the agenda of increasing diversity and inclusion in the construction industry. I'm going to quickly talk about and acknowledge our Urban Action Collaborative, which is a partnership between the Maxine Goodman Levin College of Urban Affairs, Cleveland State University, Policy Bridge, and the Urban League. Hold on, you're going to hear more in 2018. We're going to be launching the State of Black Cuyahoga County with a town hall meeting and everything to follow. In the area of entrepreneurship and economic development, it is important to note the strides we have made in helping to create and grow minority and women-owned businesses. While there's no shortage of well-resourced organizations who serve the minority community, the Urban League unapologetically sets our stake in the ground that who we serve are minority businesses because there is great need and they need great support. In the last 2 years and 9 months of operation alone, we have served 2,047 business clients, creating 175 new businesses, which account for 709 new jobs. $58.6 million in contracts were awarded to those businesses. Bonding capacity increased by $11.5 million. And $6 million worth of equity investments were made in 141 firms. Finally, 60 entrepreneurs obtained $8.6 million in loans, a lot attributed to our Capital Access Fund, making the total economic impact of our program efforts in this period more than $84.5 million. Entrepreneurship Center team. Woo-hoo, okay? So as I begin to close, I want to say that time has not permitted me to detail the many solutions that the Urban League has crafted over these 100 years. But what I want to do now as I end is have us think together for a moment. And I want to make sure that I acknowledge those who have helped us to put together our historical piece over in the Urban League Live. So Susan Hall, I want to thank you for being here today from the History Center. And I want to thank Preston Pickett from Cleveland State and the Fairfax Fourth Quarter and Associates, who were very instrumental in putting that together for us. And I want to thank those who hosted tables to be here today as well. So in ending, let's remember this. Since we still face walls of oppression and resistance to change that Robert Kennedy described as mighty, we must be collaboratively positioned, seeking out meaningful, committed partnerships to continue the job at hand. And this is where you can play a significant role. And I want to thank the Cleveland Foundation, particularly who stepped up in a major way to support the Urban League this year in making sure that we were able to move forward in our growth mode. And also, I want to thank the Gun Foundation for the support and friendship they've given us over time as well. So now I'm inviting you to help us to strike out against injustice, wherever it may be found, by advocating with governmental representatives and thought leaders for socially responsible legislation and policies. And we want to hear your ideas on how you would like to start your own ripple effect. As you leave today, you will be handed a brand new brochure, which we are launching today. And inside, it shows you about the ripple effect of one single drop dropping off of a leaf to create a ripple. And so you'll have that to remind you as you go forward. So finally, from the speech from Robert Kennedy, when he came to the Cleveland, here to the City Club of Cleveland, this is what he said. And this was right after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. He said this: I want to, for there is another kind of violence, slower, but just as deadly, destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. This is the violence of institutions, indifference, inaction, and decay. This is the violence that afflicts the poor, that poisons relations between men because their skin has different colors. This is the slow destruction of a child by hunger and schools without books and homes without heat in the winter. This is the breaking of a man's spirit by denying him the chance to stand as a father and as a man amongst other men. And this too afflicts us all. Yet we know what we must do, and that is to achieve true justice among all of our fellow citizens. We can perhaps remember, if only for a time, that those who live with us are our brothers, that they share with us the same short moment of life, that they seek, as do we, nothing but the chance to live out their lives in purpose and in happiness, winning what satisfaction and fulfillment that they can. I'm going to ask now, are you willing to stand with the Urban League against these injustices? Are you willing to stand with us as we move forward to cure the ills in this community? Are you willing to stand with me today? Are you willing to stand with me today? Are you willing to stand? Thank you.
Stay right there. I'll just move my card up. Thank you. That's wonderful. Today at the City Club, we're enjoying a forum with Marsha A. Mockabee, our good friend, and also the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. Thank you so much for bringing history forward with you. That is one of my favorite speeches of all time. We're about to begin the audience Q&A, and we welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, and those of you joining us via our webcast. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and we will work it into the program. May we have our first question, please? We have one in the front here.
Ms. Mockabee, could you please tell us what you feel the community's top priorities should be at this time, given there's so many competing ones? Which ones would you name?
Okay, thank you, Board Member Ziman. That is a very good question. What I would say is, I think it's really a little bit difficult to name one top priority, but I think that one of the greatest things that we can do in this community is we need to come together to solve problems. I think that there are too many of us working in silos and too many of us trying to do a little bit here and there, and I think that greater capacity can be brought to bear to change systems and issues that we're facing if we would be willing to sort of drop our egos and be willing to come together and figure out how to solve problems together. So I would love to see in this community, we talk about the Urban League being collaboratively positioned, and I would hope that we could model that in this community and that we could certainly encourage others. And I know there's some great collaborations going on, but I think that's the very most important place to start.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You mentioned that there are some 58,000 households in Cleveland living in poverty today. Could you tell us what programs that the Urban League has or are supporting to try to stem generational poverty in this city?
Thank you so much for that question. Absolutely. So let me start by talking about on the youth end. We know that education is a absolutely important solution to poverty. And so helping to make sure that our young people are graduating from high school. And, I tell people all the time, I'm not the one to bring that conversation about whether kids can go to college or they're ready. I say this. It's our job to make sure that every child is ready for college, work, and life, depending on whatever decision they decide to make. And if we don't prepare them, shame on us. So that's the first thing, is preparing our youth. The second thing is we work in the workforce area to make sure that individuals not only know what job opportunities that are available, but often we're there to help train them and prepare them to take on those jobs, such as we do in the construction area. And we work with returning citizens and other groups who have barriers to access. And then finally, one of the biggest growth factors in the economy is business development. So you heard the stats from our business development end and how many jobs were being created and that kind of thing. So what I love about the Urban League is we don't work in just one area. You will see on that brochure that you'll be handed, we have a concentric circle of connected services that help families. So I believe that that's those services, and we're in the process of developing more. Our Urban Action Collaborative is actually helping us to look at research and advocacy so that we can make sure that our new programs are well-grounded and appropriately affect the needs in the community. Thank you for your question.
Based on the statistics you gave about education, such as high school graduation rate and adult literacy, how do you think Cleveland as a city can make those rates higher and improve the overall quality of education?
Thank you, young lady, so much for your question. Thank you. The first thing is we will be developing both GED programs at the Urban League as well as programs for individuals who still want to get their high school diploma. So what we find is, what we find is often individuals who drop out have had a very bad experience with traditional education, and they're very reluctant to go back into those particular venues. And so we have to get them in a place that's safe and comfortable to get them learning again, and the Urban League provides such a place. The other thing that I think the Urban League has to do is I see this year that the Urban League is going to start a movement. And that means everywhere I go on Kaleidoscope, everywhere I go, I'm going to be talking about the fact that education matters. I'm going to be talking about the fact that achievement matters so that we can begin to get people buying into the message that we all rise and fall together based on how we all are able to accomplish. And so that's a very big issue for us, is to find more and more meaningful ways to serve those that are disconnected. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Sometimes I get to ask questions too,
Okay.
Marsha.
Oh, here comes a tough one.
no.
I know.
No, we have, this goes to Jill's question earlier about community priorities. Lead poisoning has been, an awful scourge on the city, and we haven't made a whole lot of traction, despite having it being a problem for a couple of, at least that we've known about, at least for a couple of decades. Youth violence, as we've seen, has been continued to be devastating to our communities. And then in the broader scheme of things, too, our cities are facing infrastructure challenges and all sorts of other things. On Monday, we had a debate among Democratic candidates for governor. And the whole thing, a lot of the...
Is this a question?
It is. I'm getting there. Sorry, I know I'm breaking my own rule. I'm channeling Rick Taft right now. Point is, a lot of the questions have to do with an urban agenda, and we've got a governor's race next year.
Yeah.
And I would hope that whoever wins would eventually seek you out and ask for a little bit of advice on what our urban communities actually need. So let's pretend they're listening. Let's assume they're listening.
Okay.
Give some advice to the
Very
gubernatorial
good.
candidates.
Thank you. And let me just say, Dan, we don't intend to wait for them to seek us out. My car knows how to go to Columbus, and I'll definitely be making sure that we share information. But clearly, what I see the Urban League's role is we're a convener and a facilitator. So we want to make sure that for our other grassroots organizations that we're collecting information from everybody so that we're a collective voice for our community. And so we know that all those things that you talked about are very, very important. But I would say that the violence issue that's going on with the number of our young African-American males that are being killed, and both on black-on-black crime as well as, within the law enforcement area, that's something that's a high priority, I know, in my community because I get the calls. The employment issue is huge because when the employment rate is higher and people are able to access meaningful jobs, that sense of hopelessness that exists and drives people. And let's not forget the whole opioid issue and the whole drug thing, because, you know, if people aren't able to function in society and in a meaningful job and to be able to, you know, take care of their families, that's a challenge. So I guess that's why I say there's not just one issue. I'm excited about a commission that gets together and says, this is the vision for our community that we want to see in the next 10 to 20 years. And as that evolves, there will be different banners or posts of what needs to happen. And they all come together to make Cleveland a better place.
What would your advice be to the youth who want to get involved or help in some way?
Okay, I got something for you. Thank you. First of all, I would say be very involved in your schools, and the fact that you're here today is a great start, okay? There are lots of programs that your guidance counselors and others can help you to find out about, and you can get involved. Get involved in organizations that help to make change, because your voices are important, your perspectives are important, and be bold about bringing those to the table. And I will say that you all, this group is a little young for this right now, but the Urban League of Greater Cleveland is going to be launching its young professional organization in 2018, and those are individuals that are like 22 to 40. So, you know, you guys, before you know it, you'll be there. So stay tuned for that, okay? You can't hold it.
Okay. I'm used to holding the mic, Ms. Mockabee. Okay.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mockabee, for holding this session. I've got a question relative to those whom you can help.
Yes.
And those who are accessible, and then for those who don't want to be seen, who don't want to come out, how do we reach them and bring them to the table to let them know that the Urban League is available to them so that we can advance them in the city?
Thank you for that question, Bishop. I really appreciate that. I believe that the first thing is we have to really do a better job about letting the community know about the success that we have with those who do want to be seen. And we found that the word of mouth of those, because, you know, everybody has a cousin, everybody has a brother, everybody has a friend that's, you know, not being seen, that can go and draw them out a whole lot better than we can. So I think that's an important issue. We also are going to have Fourth Quarter and Associates is helping us with a marketing plan that's going to be launched this year. And I know we've already had some conversations about how important it's going to be to make sure that we look at every segment of the marketplace and have a strategy for how we address those areas. And then the other thing is, you know, the Urban League is a grassroots organization. We're not afraid to go knock on people's doors and find people where they are. We go to barbershops, we go to hair, we go wherever people are. And I think that's how we build the relationship, because relationship is key. They will come to places that they trust. So we have to work to build those relationships. Thank you.
Ms. Mockabee, you
Yes.
stated earlier that the businesses that you help materialize employed, I think, 702 people? Mm-hmm. Okay. My point is, what can the Urban League do to identify these businesses, who they are, where they are, so that we as a public can support them? Because if we don't know they're there, I'm spending my money over here, and I should be spending it over there. And I can testify to that for a lot of reasons you know about.
Yes.
But what can the Urban League do to identify these businesses and the job they're doing and what they're offering to the community and the jobs they're creating?
Thank you. Thank you. That's an excellent question. So I see my strategic business development consultant here. We just connected eye to eye, so his wheels are already turning. Michael Obey will be working on that. But I'll tell you something. On our board is Larice Pinnell, who works on the Real Black Friday information. So trust me, that's one of the things we're going to be also talking to him about helping us. But already I know that one of the things that we need to do is begin posting our businesses on our website, figuring out what kind of directories we need to help, and doing some kind of match activities to get businesses and people together to make sure that they get connected. Thank you. Thank you.
Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a forum with Marsha A. Mockabee, President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. Today's forum is part of our Local Heroes series, which is sponsored by Dominion Energy. We're delighted to have Ben Crack and Tracy Oliver with us today. Thank you so much for your commitment to and support of City Club programming. Today's forum is also the James S. Lipscomb Memorial Forum in the philanthropic spirit in community leadership, endowed by Friends of James S. Lipscomb. We appreciate their support of the City Club. Also, we welcome guests at tables hosted by CEOGC, Cuyahoga Community College, Global Cleveland, and the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. We also welcome students from Hawkins School. Student participation in City Club forums is provided by many foundations, including the William M. Weiss Foundation. We thank all of you for being here today. That brings us to the end of our forum. Thank you very much, Marsha. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Steve, for still being with us. and your intro. Ladies and gentlemen, our forum's now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland Incorporated.